Welcome in to the PFF NFL betting show for week 12. With me on the desk, Ben Linsey. Joining us remotely, Judah Fortgang. Boys, it's a week in the NFL. Not as many good games. We've been a little bit spoiled the last few weeks with some really banger games. This week, not quite so many, but that's okay. There's still plenty of opportunity to make some money. How are we doing? How did you guys enjoy that Thursday night game? Judah, I know you were heavy on the Bills there a little bit. Tell us about some of the angles you took and what you thought of that one.
Yeah, I was just betting it live. Mostly I saw this as a kind of game script play. Just I thought that each team is going to have some success on the ground and be able to run the ball. And I took this one very early when the Bills were up. Davis Mills was not connecting on any passes and couldn't throw downfield. I saw this as a spot where the Bills would be able to kind of control the game on the ground. The Texans wouldn't have the benefit of the ground game, but game scripts can flip quickly. Turnovers also play a big part there. And this was, I think, Josh Allen's worst game in many years. Took a ton of sacks, but also got to give credit to the Texans defense. I mean, they've got absolute studs on the defensive line, and they were winning one-on-one matchups all night. They are a really, really tough defense right now.
Strong. They looked incredible. I mean, that whole win goes to them. We were talking about this before the show, Ben and I, that Davis Mills just left so many points out on the field, especially early with just some missed throws. For them to be up at half and then to win this game, cover the spread as home dogs, and went outright on the money line, 23-19. Ben, you were on the game total on this one at 40, what was it, 43.5?
I got, 43.5. It ended up going up to 44.5, and we got to halftime, and I thought we were dead. The Ray Davis returned kickoff for a touchdown. The Texans driving for a touchdown at the end of the half. I thought it was over, and then we got the perfect second half to slide in just under there at 42. But honestly, the second half was how I thought most of the game was going to play out. With the Bills being under consistent pressure, I had an SGP built around Allen scrambling, Allen throwing downfield off pressure, because you see his play profile when he gets pressured leads the NFL in deep attempt percentage. He runs a good bit. He's top 10 in scramble rate. Unfortunately, neither of those two things happened. He just kept taking sacks. So that didn't hit, but we got there on the under.
What was it, 8 sacks? That is a huge number, especially for a guy that can move like Josh Allen. And I took a bit of a beating. I was on the Texans at +6 at home there. I just really like, that's a lot of points to lay to a defense like the Texans. But one of the biggest angles that I took that also didn't really pan out too well was I took faded Cook there with 75.5 rushing yards. And of course, James Cook doing what James Cook does, rips off a 50-yard run in the first quarter. The Texans hadn't allowed a rush of over 25 yards all season. And of course, they double that right there with that one. So, tough break on that one, but definitely an interesting game, and it's going to have a lot of playoff implications. And for everybody that wants more in-depth data for that one, grades are very nearly live for that game over on PFF.com. So make sure you guys go check that out. And of course, get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. 40% off right now for Black Friday. Stop betting with your gut. Start betting with the data that's already beating the books, up 115 units on the season so far. The PFF player prop tool, it's not guessing. It's winning. The same data NFL teams use to game plan right now is helping bettors cash more slips. The all-new PFF Plus player prop tool finds you the edges that the books miss, and it's built for bettors who want a real advantage. With more filters, faster performance, and a clean new design, it's never been easier. And you can get it now both on mobile and on the web. All of that for just $6 a month. Make sure you guys go out there, get PFF Plus today for everything from fantasy, betting, and of course the draft tool. some teams dead in the water. Make sure you guys go out there and fix your franchise through the draft tool. Make Trevor proud, and he'll love to see that. All right, boys. We have a lot of crossover this week. Quite a bit, in fact. So we're going to start with a game that we all have a little bit of angle on, and that's going to be the Falcons heading into New Orleans to take on the Saints. The Saints in this one, -2.5. The game total about 40.5, and we all have a little bit of a different take on this one, so I'm really interested to hear where we're all going with this. Ben, let's start with you. What angle are you taking on that Saints game there?
Yeah, I went 5 straight weeks hitting game market and prop market. We're sliding a little bit since then, so we're going to get back on track by betting on the Saints as favorites, the 2-8 Saints. And they're -2.5, -105. And really, this is primarily about me just not having any faith in the Falcons offense with Kirk Cousins without Drake London. Like, when you look at this offense, it's not like Michael Penix was playing super well. You watch this Falcons offense, he's sailing a lot of balls. He's in a lot of inaccurate throws. But Cousins has looked arguably worse, right? It's not a big sample, but with Cousins on the field this year, the Falcons have a worse EPA per play than the Titans. Like, it would be dead last in the NFL. And now you take away their one true alpha wide receiver in Drake London, who was getting 28%, or who was getting targeted on 28% of his routes. So you've got Darnell Mooney, who, like, every Darnell Mooney target this year has been a disaster. I don't know what has changed from last year to this year, but it has not been great. David Sills, Kaderil Hodge, Casey Washington. Like, this is just a very uninspiring passing attack right now. And you're going against the Saints defense that has been, when you just look at production allowed, been one of the bigger pass funnels in the NFL. Like, they've done a good job of taking away the run. They're top 10 in EPA per play allowed against the run this year, 25th against the pass. And I just don't think this Falcons team is capable of beating them through the air. So that's a large part of this Saints bet, is just kind of fading this version of the Falcons offense. The Saints are at home, coming off a bye. They're a little bit healthier than Atlanta. Obviously, talked about the quarterback and wide receiver injuries. Zach Harrison's likely going to be out again, which I probably talked more about Zach Harrison on this pod than is probably
any pod in the country.
Chris Lindstrom and Matthew Bergeron are banged up. They were DNPs on Wednesday, got upgraded to limited on Thursday. That's kind of trending towards they might play, but they are a little bit banged up on the offensive line. And Atlanta is allowing the third highest rushing success rate in the NFL. All right, so this is a defense and a situation for the Saints offense where it doesn't necessarily have to all be on Shuck. And honestly, what we've seen from Shuck so far this year has not been bad. Right? He had that game against the Rams where he wasn't super productive, but the grade wasn't terrible. Rams are a very good defense. We saw that last week against the Seattle offense that has kind of been mowing down defenses this year. And then the week before the bye against the Panthers, he put up 280 yards, had a pretty good game. So this is an ugly game. It's an ugly spot, but I think the Saints under a field goal at home off the bye is one of my favorite spreads of the week.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it is one of the more ugly games of the week, but I think that this game was fairly mispriced in a lot of spots. There's a lot of places where I think that there's money to be made, and another one is actually on the game total, where I'm actually going to go with my bet there, and it's for a lot of similar reasons. Like you said, I'm going to be taking that under at 40.5. And I think a big reason why is I think the quarterback play is going to be a bit rough there. I mean, you talked about it. No Michael Penix Jr. Kirk Cousins is obviously going to start. No Drake London. You listed the receivers. It's not a great group. I mean, in years past, Darnell Mooney would have been one of those weeks where people are telling you to start him in fantasy and all this stuff. Right now, you just cannot trust what Darnell Mooney is putting on the field. And I think a big thing right now that we do have to talk about is that this is not Kirk O'Chains. This is not the guy that the Falcons paid a bunch of money to come in and potentially, start for this team for multiple years. He has been much, much worse than even the guy that we saw get benched towards the end of last season. The EPA per play difference from these two quarterbacks is drastic. Michael Penix Jr.'s EPA per play, when he's on the field for this offense, rates in the top 10. When we talk about Kirk Cousins, it is 32nd in the NFL by a country mile. That's lower than the Tennessee Titans. That's lower than the Cleveland Browns. And when we talk about the starts that we've seen him make and the plays that we've seen him make this year, we don't have to go that far back to the Miami game. No Drake London in that game. They scored 10 total points. Bijan Robinson had 25 rushing yards. And a big reason why, this was a Miami defense that had struggled to stop the run up to that point. But what were they allowed to do in that game? Load up the box and force Kirk Cousins to beat them, and he just couldn't do that. He just could not hit open throws. He looked uneasy, and he could not get it figured out. And when we talk about this Saints defense, I mean, like you just said, Ben, they've stopped the run very well. I think that is a blueprint that they can use to put this team in a bind. And again, it's a big reason why it's a big fade on what we're seeing out of Atlanta right now. Now, I'm a little bit less bullish when we talk about the Saints team, and I know that when we get into Judah's SGP for this game, I know he's got a nice angle that I actually do sort of like. I like the narrative that we can build off of that, or sort of the storyline that we can play into a successful day for Shuck potentially. But I'm a little bit more hesitant just because we've seen them struggle to score quite a bit this year. And they've gotten a little bit worse with Shuck. Their team totals this season, 3 versus Tampa Bay. 10 versus the Rams. Now, those are two solid defenses, but then we get to Carolina. They scored 17, which was decent, but that really could have been 10 if you take that, what should have realistically been an OPI on Olave's, 40-yard plus touchdown there, where it's pretty blatant push-off that he got away with. But when we talk about scoring drive percentages with Shuck, they rank last in the NFL. At 21.7% in scoring drive percentage. So, again, that's a mark below Tennessee, below Cleveland, below Vegas. Those are teams that have really struggled to score this year. And when we talk about what the Falcons do well on defense, it's actually been in coverage. They've been better in coverage, and they blitz quite a bit. They're one of two teams that blitz on 50% of passing downs. Shuck, when pressured versus the blitz, has a 28.5 passing grade. He's 0 for 9 with an interception when blitzed and pressured. So that's sort of where my angle's at, is that it's going to be a pretty ugly game. I think if either of these teams are going to find success, it's going to be running the ball a little bit here, which is going to lead to a faster game. It's going to run out fewer plays, and it's just going to be a lower scoring script here at 40.5. I think that this game could have been a few points lower, and I still probably would have potentially taken that. Now, Judah, I know that when we talk about this game, you have a slightly different angle with your SGP. Go ahead and tell us what you're breaking into for that and what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, this is Shuck, 280 and the Saints to win at minus 2.5. I think kind of where I disagree is twofold. On the Saints side, I think like what we've seen from Shuck, I wouldn't pay too much attention to most of what we've seen. Like breaking down any subcategory of Shuck's play versus the blitz off of like very, very few dropbacks. I think is something we should be wary of. Not to mention that so much of kind of the numbers are dictated by confounding variables, like the fact that he was playing the Rams team. But all is to say, like, this is a guy who doesn't have 100 career dropbacks yet, and kind of what I see is a guy who's actually trending somewhat upwards in basically all of the relevant statistical categories, like his PFF grade, his EPA. Everyone has gotten better in each subsequent game. Again, that's also a function of some of the defenses he's played. But he's been very aggressive. He's got a high 8 dot. That's the sort of thing I think is sticky. And this is a Falcons defense that started the year playing decently, but over the last month or so, it's been really bad. Their yards per dropback, they're allowing the second most of any team. This is a yardage play primarily. And what I think is particularly intriguing here is that kind of taking Ben's angle as well. I just really do not have faith in this Falcons offense and their ability to move the ball. So I think we can get a lot more plays. Shuck has not dropped back to throw very often. I think this could be a spot where he gets kind of that 32, 34, 36 range of pass attempts, in which case I think some of the volume numbers are mispriced. I would love, I think Olave is in a great spot here as well. A nice DFS play there. I think the kind of correlation, if you add an Olave Lake to this, does not make this worthwhile. But there are a lot of paths, I think, and I'm basically selling this Atlanta pass defense and betting on kind of extra play volume, given where I think Atlanta's offense is going to struggle here.
So I think while you guys definitely have an angle on Shuck, and I can get with it. You guys are real smart, and every time you guys talk, I definitely go, hey, maybe we're on to something here. So I'm definitely going to be in there tailing that too. And as Walt in the chat here says, the Alante Taylor pick 6 on Old Man Cousins, I think that just puts it perfectly. I just fade the Falcons right now. There's not really too much to go into that. I mean, if you watch them on Sundays, it's a pretty bad look. Things don't go super well for them unless they're firing on all cylinders, and there's really not a lot in between. And when we've seen what we've seen out of Kirk Cousins, it just has not been good. So I think we're all on that angle, and I could definitely see it happening.
From a macro perspective, that trade is looking worse and worse, the draft trade for Atlanta, right? That pick is going to be a top 10 pick. It might slide into the top 5 for the Rams. And James Pierce, it might be a good player, but that's tough to swallow when you look at an Atlanta roster that has, they do have holes, and it would be nice to fill those with a top 10 caliber player.
And that's something that Walt mentions in the chat, that they could have gotten that, another receiver, because when they don't have Drake London, it doesn't look great. And Drake London's, he moves around a lot. He is a true number 1 receiver, but they could definitely use a second really effective tool. Kyle Pitts at times, we thought we were starting to see that Kyle Pitt break out early on in the season, but it's sort of come back down to earth here for this one. So that'll be something worth watching for. And of course, everybody, make sure you guys get your player prop picks in the chat. We'll parlay them together at the end of the show and get that going. All winnings are going to charity here for that one. Now we're going to move to another game, which is going to have some interest here in town. Judah, tell us about your game market pick of the week.
Yeah, it's New England. It's -5.5. This is a combination of many things. But I think it's mostly just selling the Bengals in particular. I mean, I don't need me to spit out a bunch of stats on how bad this defense has been. It is historically bad at this rate. They really cannot get off the field. I anticipate New England should have no problem generating success. It's some cases, I think you could present all the data, but it somewhat speaks for itself. And that is just how bad this Cincinnati defense has been.
Judah is a proponent
really what this comes
of
down to me is, first off, I don't think Joe Burrow is playing, and the market is pricing Joe Burrow as in. And even if he does come back, I think there is this assumption that you just kind of snap your fingers and it's Joe Burrow is perfectly healthy and not on a sort of rush timeline with a major toe injury hampering his mobility. And Burrow does not have the traditional scrambler quarterback, but he actually does rely on his legs insofar as he's maneuvering the pocket, which did definitely cause a stir in the offseason among those deep in football analytics Twitter. But that is a huge part of his game, and that's just not something you snap in week 1 back from an injury. Not to mention historically Burrow has been horrific in his first game back. So even if Burrow does play, I think this is probably mispriced. Not to mention Jamar Chase is not going to be playing in this game. That is absolutely massive. Sure, T. Higgins, and I know Mason, this is something you're looking at. He's been great in man coverage. I think he's going to be in a difficult spot here against Christian Gonzalez with all of the attention because Cincinnati does not have the secondary weapons to win outside of that. And if it's Burrow coming back from injury, if it's Flacco, who I don't think is fully healthy, dealing with a shoulder injury himself, I think there's a ton of uncertainty injury-wise. And the thing that is kind of most certain to me about this game is the Patriots' ability to move the ball on an absolutely horrific Cincinnati defense. Without Trey Hendrickson, has been able to do absolutely nothing to stop teams.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about this Bengals defense throughout the year, obviously. Issues on the ground, issues through the air. It has not looked good in a lot of metrics. Bottom 3 in pretty much every defensive efficiency metric that you can talk about. As you mentioned, Judah, not really too much worth beating a dead horse there with that fact. I'm a little bit more bullish on what potentially we could see from this offense, even with Joe Flacco playing, just because they've been pretty well. And something that we've talked about with that Patriots defense is their, sort of pass funnel ability. I think that we've seen the Bengals be able to put up some points, and there's been a couple of times where, it's slightly different circumstances, but where the Patriots have sort of been caught from behind against teams that are lesser because of some of those coverage issues. So it is going to be something worth watching. But, I mean, you bring up a great point. This team in New England is the real deal, especially after getting TreVeyon Henderson going, which, I mean, maybe we could spend a couple seconds talking about that. But I thought this guy was going to absolutely explode after watching him in the preseason. And all of these pieces that they've grabbed off the defense, too. Walt in the chat here talking about Robert Spillane being an absolute dog, especially in the run game. He can't really cover anybody, but, being in the run game, he's been absolutely devastating. So he's a great player. They've got a lot of great players around on that defense now. They've really started to put some pieces together. What have you guys seen about TreVeyon Henderson this year? Or Ben, what are you making of this game market in general?
Yeah, with the Patriots, you get the nice bump of the Burrow uncertainty, especially if you're, like Judah was saying, you like it regardless of whether it's Burrow or Flacco. This line moved across 7 to 5.5, right? So you're getting a good amount of value there, especially if you don't really mind if Burrow is playing. There are some markets for this game in the prop markets that I'm interested in that have not come out yet. I have interest in Ramondre Stevenson, to what you were saying about TreVeyon Henderson. If Henderson comes back, I think it's more of a 50-50 split. And if they show a big difference between Henderson and Stevenson's lines, in this matchup against Cincinnati, which has been atrocious against everyone this season, I'll have interest in Ramondre Stevenson. I also have interest in Mitchell Tinsley in this game. One, just because I think he's better than Andre Yoshivas, and I think he's going to be on the field. The Jermaine Burton experience has ended. I think. We'll see if he's active for this game, but I think Mitchell Tinsley is going to be that other guy on the outside, and he's flashed when he's been out there. So if they hang a low number for Mitchell Tinsley, I'll have interest in that. As well, because I do think, yes, the Patriots offense will roll, but this is also a Patriots pass defense that, you can attack a little bit. All right, whether the Bengals without Jamar Chase are well equipped to attack that to the point that they'll cover against the Patriots team that is probably putting up 30+, I don't think that's going to be the case. But I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. Right, and T. Higgins is going to get all the attention. He could still put up numbers, but he's going to get all the attention from the Patriots defense. So I think that creates a situation where Mitchell Tinsley can have a nice game.
Ball likes it. Pats 27-13 from Walt in the chat. I could definitely see the angle you're taking at. I want to push back slightly in terms of, I think that even at a 50-50 split, I'm not quite so sure Stevenson is the guy that is going to rip off some of the explosives. Now, you don't have to, especially if some of the lines are lower there. But when we see what we've seen from Henderson, I think that even with a slightly inflated number there, you're going to have a lot of opportunities to hit some of those alts, because he is going to rip off a couple of big ones, as we've seen pretty much everybody who's played this Bengals defense do. So that's sort of my only real like pushback on that one. Judah, is there anything that you've seen in, that run game, or what else are you seeing with that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I never want to guess workloads off injuries. That's really what it comes down to. I think, like, Henderson is a lot more explosive naturally. And on the Bengals side, it is, like, not in this game in particular, because I think this can get out of control very quickly. I just want to avoid the backfield entirely. Because I see this as a spot where New England's going to be playing from ahead, in addition to us talking about their run defense. But ultimately, like, to answer your question generally, I don't love to kind of guess on workload, and I think that's kind of the name of the game here.
Understandable. Definitely makes sense there. And something that we've talked about a bunch this week, so I might as well pull the Band-Aid off, or so far, I might as well just pull the Band-Aid off. I have a lot of T. Higgins this week. I have quite a bit of T. Higgins this week. One of my favorite bets of the week for T. Higgins is actually an anytime touchdown, about 125 or plus 130. I think that, this is going to be one of the bigger plays of the week. I'm a little more bullish on Joe Burrow potentially being back. And even if not, I think Flacco has been, great for Higgins, and he really knows how to operate this offense, get the ball out of his hand quickly. And what we've seen with this New England defense is really encouraging me for a guy in Higgins that has 7 touchdowns this season, tied for 3rd in the NFL. He's got 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games. That's been incredible to see what he's been able to do. New England, on the other hand, has allowed 14 touchdowns wide receivers. That's tied for the 2nd most in the NFL. They have 7 touchdowns allowed to receivers in the last 3 games. We saw the game where Drake London had 118 and 3 scores. I think we could potentially be looking at a very similar route for Higgins in this one. He has 5 touchdowns off of explosives of more than 25 yards. 3 of them were from 40 plus. And when we talk about New England, they give up explosives at an enormous rate. They've allowed a touchdown of 20 plus yards to a receiver in each of the last 2 games. I really like the potential. This is a game that has a pretty high line here at 51.5. I think that even if the Pats are going to be able to cover the 5.5, which I think they can, even if they're going to be able to, I don't think the Bengals offense is going to be dead in the water. I think they're going to have to throw a lot to try to keep pace with Drake May. And when we see that, I think it's going to lead to points on the board. And I have more for T. Higgins, but we're going to wait a little bit to get into that. I don't want to give all the good stuff away right off the bat. So we'll jump into more T. Higgins a little bit later after we get the guys' indications on some of their prop bets of the week. But Ben, we're going over into another ugly game for your prop bet of the week. Tell us a little bit about what you're targeting and why.
Yeah, I'm on Kenneth Walker anytime touchdown at plus 135 this week. It's kind of been hovering in that 125 to 135 range. And I just think this is a matchup where it's lopsided. Like this bonus game market, I like Seattle to cover 13.5. against Tennessee. This is a Seattle offense that has shown that they can just put up a lot of points on bad defenses. And on the flip side, I don't really expect Tennessee to be able to do much of all against a very good Seattle defense. That we kind of talked about how the Rams limited Seattle in that game last week. You can say the same thing for the Seattle defense against the Rams, right? They kind of held them down for a lot of that game, only gave up 20 points despite Sam Darnold throwing 4 interceptions. And when you get to this prop specifically, we've seen a shift in the usage down near the goal line this season. Like the thing has always been Kenneth Walker leads him down the field. All right, Zach Charbonnet's coming in to vulture a touchdown. And I think we're kind of shifting away from that a little bit. Since their bye week in week 8, the 3 weeks since the bye, if you look at carries inside the 5, Walker has 4, Charbonnet has 1, AJ Barner has 1 on their tush push package. But I think Walker they're starting to put more trust in him in those situations. And then anecdotally, you have Mike McDonald coming out this week, and saying, he's showing that he's earning more opportunities to get the ball with Kenneth Walker. And when coaches say something like that, specifically directed at a player, like I think there's a difference between what McDonald is saying about Walker right here and what Dan Campbell, the quotes we got on David Montgomery that came out, which was like talking about Montgomery in the Eagles game, and Campbell was like, yeah, we always want to get Montgomery more touches. And I think this McDonald quote on Walker is a little bit more pointed. There's a little bit more signal to it. Walker's also just been better than Charbonnet. Yes, he'll take a few more negative plays, but we're talking about a game where I expect Seattle to put up a lot of points. Walker is getting more of the goal line touches, and Tennessee is allowing the third most touchdowns per game to opposing running backs. Getting this at plus money for a team expected to put up a lot of points, their starting running back, I think it's a good price here for Walker.
Dalton, our friend Dalton Wasserman, he's going to love you for that one, because we watch the games with Dalton every Sunday here at the office, and to hear that man scream every time they take Kenneth Walker off the field to put Zach Charbonnet in for the goal line touches, he dies a little bit inside. It's to be honest, it's comedy to watch. So for the brand, he definitely needs to get in the end zone there so that we can figure that thing out. Judah, when we talk about this Saints-Titans matchup, is there anything that sticks out for you? I mean, this is a pretty ugly game. It's looking like it's at about 13.5, or it's about 13 points. Game total about 40.5. This is something that I wrote about earlier in the week when we were talking, when we break down the early lines to bet. And if you guys aren't checking that one out, make sure you guys go PFF.com. That's how you can see Judah and my picks of the week early on. Judah, is there anything that you see in this matchup?
I think the market has this one pretty much spot on. Like, there is a world of a difference between these two teams. The Seattle defense was insanely good on Sunday against the Rams. Really a very quietly dominant performance. I think Cam Ward against this defense is a massive mismatch. And then, of course, on the other side of the ball, this is not a Tennessee defense that's been any good, and a Seattle offense, I think, that we'll be able to kind of stay in rhythm and have Darnold back to not throwing 4 interceptions in a game, but cooking some teams. We're dealing with some pretty huge numbers. I don't hate a Darnold yards per attempt bet, and I don't hate getting a little crazy with the SGPs and building in some sacks and some really kind of left tail Titans outcomes. But yeah, there's a reason the Seahawks are 13.5-point favorites.
On the Seattle yards per attempt, this is a spot where I am going to take a shot on the Rashid Shaheed breakout, finally does something game. Tennessee is bottom 5 in deep completions allowed. This is when Shaheed gets traded to Seattle, we're all like, this is the perfect match, right? Darnold has been excellent going downfield. Shaheed is one of the best deep threats in the league. Get through the first 2 games, hasn't really done anything. Last week, right? AJ Barner had 10 catches. I just don't think that Rams matchup was super conducive to taking those shots. But now you're kind of 3 weeks out. I've kind of forgot about it a little bit. The lines aren't very high, right? It's right around 40 yards. This is where I want to take the Shaheed bomb bets.
Walt says Titans are going to have the number 1 pick. I'm inclined to agree with you, Walt. Not only that, this is not just a bad offense. We could talk till we're blue in the face about how this Titans offense is bad. Obviously no Calvin Ridley now. A bunch of rookies and Cam Ward trying to figure this thing out isn't really conducive to success. But when we talk about from a historical standpoint, or just over the last decade, this is the lowest offense in EPA per play earned by a pretty solid margin. We have teams like the Jets 2023 offense on this list, Arizona and Buffalo in 2018. The Browns this year are on that list, and the Titans are lower than all of them on that list. So it's a pretty tough look for them. Having them try to find points against this Seahawks defense is not really a great look. I took them early on in the week at -12.5, and I'm pretty happy with that because now it's obviously moved to 13.5. And I think that it could even probably push up to 14 where it becomes a little more touch and go at times. But yeah, at 13.5, I think, you're getting it under 2 scores. This is something, Ben, that we talked about, just upstairs just a little bit ago. This is a pick, that you're liking as well. When we've seen this Seahawks team, they've just absolutely beat the hell out of really bad competition. And, that Rashid Shaheed breakout, it feels like a lot of times what we've seen is some more designed runs from him where they traded for him to really go down the field. So I think that this is a great opportunity for something like that, absolutely. And it's going to be an interesting to watch. But, of course, another game that doesn't really have the most on the line there. We have another pretty good one in Judah's prop bet market. Judah, go ahead and tell us what your angle is this week in the prop department.
Yeah, going back to the well with the quarterback over passing yards did us a solid last week. It's Jordan Love over 237.5 passing yards. This is a Minnesota defense that I think is very, very overrated right now. Basically, the last 6 weeks, they've been getting pretty beaten in pass defense, bottom 5 yards per attempt, EPA, etc. And kind of the defining, trait, I guess, in playing the Vikings is like how well do you perform against the blitz? Because this is a team that has blitzed like 68% of the time in the last 5-6 weeks. And Jordan Love is second in the NFL in EPA per play against the blitz. And the entirety right now of the Packers receivers are limited participants in practice. But that does mean that, they're not DMPs. And I anticipate these guys going. I think Christian Watson has really added a huge element since coming back. He's been terrific, especially downfield. Obviously, we were on that angle last week. But you also add in that I do not trust this Minnesota offense's ability to move the ball. And I think that like J.J. McCarthy right now is not performing at an kind of NFL level, and that is just going to lead to too many extra drives per se for the Packers team. And Jordan Love, I think, is going to have an efficient day. This is an overrated Vikings defense. He's good against the blitz. I think this is a great spot for the Packers overall, and I think this is especially a great spot for Jordan Love.
See, and I love your angle there, and that's something that I think needs to be said more about this Vikings team is that at times they look like one of the best defenses in the NFL. We saw them really put Jared Goff in knots, and when you play by these blitz packages, you really live and die by them. Because good quarterbacks can take advantage of you, and quarterbacks that aren't quite so sensitive to the blitz really do excel in picking this team apart. And that's something that we've seen quite a bit. The Eagles were able to do that, and I think that we could see a similar angle from Jordan Love. Ben, when you look at this game, we've got the Vikings heading into Green Bay. They're -6, or the Packers, that is, are -6.5. And Judah, I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, you were on Green Bay early in the week, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I like that angle as well. Ben, is there anything that you see from this game market, or from this game in general?
Speaking of living and dying by those blitz packages, I've watched pit football for a long time, and Flores took a lot of that stuff from Narduzzi. So I'm very familiar with living and dying by those packages. But for this game, I tend to agree in theory, and a lot of it is fading the Minnesota offense. I'm not going to bet Green Bay. There's just too many situations where Green Bay's been in good spots, and it's just like they just don't look great and they don't cover. So I'm going to stay away from that. But in theory, I do like some of this Green Bay passing stuff. It seems like Josh Jacobs, his status is up in the air. I think the smart thing would be to sit him for Thanksgiving on Thursday. It seems like Josh Jacobs is very anti-sitting when he could potentially play. So there's probably a back and forth between him and the coaching staff on that for this game. But the Love passing over makes sense, right? For a lot of the points that Judah made. The one angle that I really like in this game, and it's picking between the Green Bay wide receivers can kind of be a treacherous task, but I do like Dontavian Wicks reception overs in this game. He has a 31% target rate versus the blitz this year. That's top 10 at wide receiver. That's the highest on Green Bay. And you look at the 2 games against Minnesota last year, and he had 18 targets in those 2 games, right? And I bet his alt receptions earlier in the week. You can get 5+ at 8-1 almost. You can get 7+ at 40-1, which is kind of a crazy number, but like they do spread the ball around. I do think more of those targets could funnel to Wicks in this game. Obviously, health is a question with all of them. As Judah pointed out, they're all limited on the injury report. Wicks is limited with the same injury that he's had, and he played last week, so I'm assuming he's going to be good. I think it's the same case with Christian Watson. So we'll see exactly how that ends up, but I think there could be value on Wicks receptions.
Love it. Book it. We have a lot of good angles to go at, boys. And of course, for everybody, make sure you guys go get the PFF player prop tool. They're playing it on screen right now. You get that with a PFF Plus subscription. And of course, right now, I'll let you guys in on a little secret. You can get it for 40% off with the promo code Black Friday, all caps, no space. I'm not sure if they have to be all caps, but try both. No space for sure, all caps. That's how you get it for $6 a month. That gets you access to the PFF player prop tool and all of the data trusted by all 32 teams, as well as the mock draft simulator. So that if you're, unfortunately a Titans fan, or maybe even in there with the Saints, or maybe the Browns, you can go in there and draft your next franchise changer. Black Friday, 40% off. It doesn't get better than that. The best subscription in football, bar none.
And real quick before we move on, I had a comment on talking about not being enough information for Tyler Shuck, but we're basically saying we want to fade J.J. McCarthy when, again, it's a situation with not a lot of information. And basically my thought there, I'm interested in yours, Judah, is Shuck has looked significantly more comfortable than J.J. J.J. McCarthy has been truly bottom tier quarterback play for 90% of when he's playing. And yes, he's had some moments late in the game where he stepped up and made some plays, but it's not like he's been playing great teams. Chicago twice, which is a very beatable pass defense, right? And it's just looked errant throws all over the place, right? Not able to consistently move the ball. There is some level of limited sample with J.J. McCarthy too. I just have a little bit more faith in what I've seen with Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, I think there are 2 points here. One is it's not about the sample of the overall play that I was referring to with Shuck. It was more so if we're breaking down his play versus the blitz, let's say, that's already a very limited sample. And also J.J. McCarthy still has twice the number of dropbacks. That's a lot more information than Shuck. But yeah, for Shuck, it's a combination of there are certain things you don't need data to tell you. The accurate throws or lack thereof for J.J. McCarthy. But yeah, that's kind of the point. Is you want to look at the trend of where these quarterbacks are going, and Shuck by basically all grading standards has been a lot better, and J.J. McCarthy just his destroy rate, which I feel like I've referenced 1,000 times on this podcast, is just 60% in the NFL, and you're not going to succeed that way. And there's a little reason to suggest that is a statistical aberration. Whereas I have no idea how good Tyler Shuck is going to be against the blitz because he's had 20 dropbacks against it.
I mean, and that's also something to be said. That was something we mentioned last week when I thought 250, J.J. McCarthy. This has to be a chance for him where he can figure it out against a Bears defense that has struggled against pretty much everybody. And we talked, Judah, if you remember, we talked about, I asked you about that destroy rate, and it did not look good. And what do you know? It came out. That's how it really happened. And that's something that we continue to see from him, is that during his time as the starter for this team, he has by and large looked like one of, if not the worst quarterback in the NFL. And it's been really tough when you're missing throws, really high inaccuracy percentages. So that's a really tough look. And just to also to mention that this game, I'm pretty sure that this game is in Green Bay. Correct? Yep. Yeah. This game is in Green Bay. So on the road, out in the elements, like that is going to be a tough draw for him there for sure. So that's definitely going to be one that we're going to be keeping an eye on. And of course, boys, we have some SGPs to get into. But before we do that, we've got to talk about Fabric by Gerber Life. As parents, we do everything we can to set up our kids for success in the future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life is designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. It's all online, and setting up an account could take just 5 minutes. Get started investing with as little as $1 a day, then manage your child's accounts and monitor their investments right from your phone. You can share your child's unique gifting link with your family and friends, so instead of them gifting things they'll outgrow for birthdays or special occasions, they can get help to grow your child's investments instead. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. So join thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors, Inc. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investments are subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Well, boys, it's a good thing I'm better with the numbers than I am spelling, because we have some bangers in the same game parlay market. As I mentioned earlier, I have an angle on T. Higgins that I am excited to talk about, and we'll get into that one here in a little bit. But I want to hear an angle that I'm interested to see this angle that Ben has here for the Detroit game. Ben, tell us a little bit about what you're targeting in that one.
Yeah, I lost money on Khalif Raymond last week, and I'm ready to get hurt again this week. But I think with Sam Laporta out, he does get a significant bump in this offense. And if you look at just the personnel Detroit was using, they basically got rid of any two tight end stuff against Philadelphia. Brock Wright is the only tight end on the Detroit offense who ran a route last week. They even ran a few snaps with 10 personnel with 4 wide receivers on the field. They were in 11 personnel pretty much the whole game. Did a couple stuff with Gibbs and Montgomery on the field together. But that bumps Raymond's participation, at least, in terms of how often he's out there on the field. It's basically Jameson Williams, Amon St. Brown, and then some split of Khalif Raymond and Isaac Tesla, the rookie they drafted this year. And Tesla has been limited in practice this week with an oblique injury. So, one, I think Raymond is out there more with Laporta off the field, and you're also vacating the Laporta targets because Brock Wright is not going to see the same kind of target volume and run the same type of routes necessarily that Sam Laporta was. And if you look just with Sam Laporta off the field since 2023, Khalif Raymond has 83 routes run, 271 receiving yards on 13 catches. That's 3.3 yards per route run about. That's a very good number, very small sample, granted, but he's been productive with Laporta off the field, even when you factor in that game last week against Philadelphia where he did nothing. And this is a soft matchup for the Detroit offense. Like, I will have multiple lines on slot SGPs built with different combinations. Like, this is a spot where coming off a loss, they get at home against a bad defense. This is a spot that Detroit has performed very well. Even if you look this season, when they're coming off a loss, they've had 3 losses. Week 1 against Green Bay, they came back 52-21 against Chicago. Week 7 against Tampa Bay, after the Kansas City loss, 24-9, a little bit worse output, a little bit tougher matchup. But then when they lost to Minnesota, came back, beat Washington 44-22. When they get a soft matchup at home off a loss, this is an offense I'm very interested in. Right, it's a very different spot than last week, outdoors in the cold at night against Philadelphia. The Lions defense that has struggled defending deep completions. I think Khalif Raymond can get downfield. Realized I didn't actually say the bet, so the bet is Khalif Raymond 60+ receiving yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs 100+ rushing yards. So Raymond, basically this 60+ number is low. You get super high odds on it. You're basically banking on him catching one big explosive play. Could also get there with 5 catches too. I think that's not out of the realm of possibility given how often he's going to be on the field. Giants are also dead last in explosive run rate allowed. Right? Those outside Jahmyr Gibbs runs against this Lions defense, I think there's a very high likelihood that we see some big plays on those carries for Gibbs. The Giants have allowed 16.4% of the design runs against them to go for 10+ yards this season. That is worse than the NFL. This is the specific one I'm looking at. It's 110-1, so it is a pretty big swing. But I'll also have SGP is built around Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra and Montgomery. I'll take a couple of these super high odds SGPs with different pieces in the Lions offense.
Yeah, and I like the rushing angle there. I'm sort of on an under for Goff volume just because, this is an offense that obviously wants to run the football, and they're getting a matchup that they're going to be able to do that. And I think an interesting note that you said, this is a different game than we saw at, Philly in the cold, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that because they're going to be at home or in a dome for much of the rest of the way. So this Detroit team is really not going to be this, team that's sort of been on and off over the last few weeks. They're definitely going to come out and produce in some of these matchups. Do you see anything in that game, Judah?
No, I'm with Ben on the just onslaughts of the Lions, and kind of especially so if Dart is playing. Quarterback off concussion, not to mention, I do not anticipate he's going to be used as much as a designed runner this season as he was kind of earlier, and that I think is going to have some pretty rough downstream effects for the Giants rushing offense and for Dart's production himself. I don't think this is going to be a Giants team that's going to put up a ton of points with Dart at quarterback, and then it's a complete dream matchup for virtually anyone on the Lions, and they can put up an absolutely massive day of offense. So SGP gold in that.
Yeah, and we've talked a couple times about trying to target the Lions because they're so heavy man coverage, but they're good, man. They play hard. They do the you can't call holding on every play. They're super physical. And this is a Giants receiving core where I don't think they can take advantage of this Lions defense. The Eagles weren't able to take advantage last week. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't know what Darius Slayton's status is. I think he's questionable. But this is just a limited receiving core, and I think the Lions will kind of be able to suffocate them. And we've seen in these spots that the Lions can put up some big offensive numbers, right? And I think this is a potential one where they can as well.
Love it. Book it, boys. We're making money there. All right. I've been teasing you guys the whole broadcast here. It's time for the T. Higgins. I'm calling this one the Boston Tea Party. You guys get get that one?
That's high quality.
Yeah,
right there.
We're working the names, boys. We're working the names. Judah, I know you like that one. That one.
So it was the delivery, Mason. It was the delivery.
Yeah. It's all about the delivery. That's how it always is. So I'm going T. Higgins, 120+ and 2 touchdowns. If that sounds familiar, he did this just 2 weeks ago. So I'm really not scared away from this. It's 20-1. And I think that I'm also going to end up folding in some TreVeyon Henderson. This is sort of how we talked about a little bit earlier. We're waiting on Ramondre Stevenson's status. That's why pretty much week after week, we've had a lot of the, TreVeyon Henderson lines come out a little bit late. But I'm actually liking the alts and what value we could potentially get there with T. Higgins. When we talk about no Chase and potentially getting Joe Burrow back, without Chase on the field, we've seen some pretty monster performances from Higgins. Just over their last 3, he had, in these come a few years ago, 2022, 2023, he had a game against Pittsburgh, 9 receptions, 148, 7 receptions, 114 and a touchdown against Tennessee, and then another game against Pittsburgh, 5 receptions, 140 and a touchdown. He gets a 2% boost in his target percentage without Chase on the field, and I expect that to jump a little bit further considering that they have fewer, established weapons. They're going to need to keep pace with Drake May and that offense over there in New England, something that we obviously talked about a little bit earlier. And when we talk about this Patriots defense, they're a bit of a pass funnel there. They're top 10 in rushing success rate allowed, bottom 10 in passing success rate allowed. They've allowed a 100-yard receiver to 5 different players. 100-yard receiving game to 5 different players this year, 200-yard receivers in just their last 2 games. And, as we've talked about just previously, the man coverage angle is a big one. T versus man coverage. New England runs a top 8 rate of man coverage. He's 5th in PFF receiving grade at 90.4 this season against it. He doubles his yards per route run versus man compared to zone, and he has 4 touchdowns this season. 4 of his 7 have come against man coverages. I'm going to be playing a few variations to this. I'm probably going to also fold in some TreVeyon Henderson, like I said. Maybe some Joe Burrow passing if that becomes available and is a nice value there. So it's going to be something worth watching for sure. And that does it for us, boys. It was a doozy of a show. We've got a lot of value. We've got some more game markets and prop markets on the horizon. So make sure you guys follow Ben at BenLinsey _, Judah at Throw the Damn Ball, and myself at PFF _Mace. And we're going to have more picks throughout the week. That's how you guys can tail us there. And of course, make sure you guys are going and getting your subscription to PFF Plus right now for the Black Friday sale. It's 40% off. That gets you everything from the PFF player prop tool to all of the data from Premium Stats trusted by all 32 NFL teams, as well as the mock draft simulator and the new boards that you guys can go in there. You guys can get the consensus board. You guys can get Trevor's board. There's probably some more boards on the way. So make sure you guys get in there. Just $6 per month. Use code BLACKFRIDAY to get access to that. And of course, for Ben Linsey, for Judah Fortgang, for our producers in the back, Tyler, Quinn, Eli, I'm Mason Cameron, and until next week, y'all, have a good one.